Hi, I'm Daniel Parvin. In this video, I'll demonstrate the MIDI counterpoint analyzer after providing some general context. This project uses Java Spring Boot with Thymeleaf, the JFree chart library, a few interfaces from the javax.sound.midi package, and some basic HTML and CSS. MIDI files represent musical notes played in time. This screenshot is a visualization of a MIDI file from another program called MIDI Editor. The x-axis represents time, while the y-axis represents pitch or notes. In this example of a Bach fugue in 5 distinct voices or tracks, each track gets its own color to visually differentiate it from the others. Notice that in this case, Bach introduces each voice from bottom to top. And notice that each voice starts with the same pattern. Start, down a step, up a leap, down a step, down a step. Start, down, up, down, down. Start, down, up, down, down, and so on with the yellow and red tracks. Learning to recognize these analytical details enables you to enjoy a piece of classical music for its architecture and its intricacy. Music theory can be very dry and abstract in itself, but when you apply it to concrete pieces, it can really enhance your experience of listening to or playing music. Counterpoint is the branch of music theory focused on the interplay of distinct voices within a piece. How do the voices relate to each other? How do they imitate each other? In what order do they enter? And how do they transform a subject or theme? These are the kinds of questions that counterpoint analysis answers. My tool currently focuses on just one thing, analyzing the contrapuntal motion between two voices. There are basically 3 kinds of motion that can occur between two voices. The two voices can move up or down in the same direction, the two voices can move in opposite directions, or one voice can move up or down while the other remains in place. These types of contrapuntal motion are called similar, contrary, and oblique motion, respectively. There is a 4th type of motion called parallel motion, in which both voices move in the same direction and with the same distance, or interval. Parallel motion is usually distinguished from similar motion, but for my purposes I am lumping those 2 categories together. We can see a great example of extensive contrary motion in this keyboard work by J.S. Bach. This is called the 2-part invention in E major. Notice how the left-hand part ascends, while the right-hand part descends. In measure 5, that pattern is inverted. Here the right-hand part ascends, while the left descends. Bach wrote 30 keyboard works like this, called the Inventions and Sinfonias. Each one is a gem, but this is one of my favorites. Down here, do you see how the two voices move in similar motion? The right-hand part has these extra notes tucked in between the main notes, but if you look at the main notes as they line up with the left-hand part, you see that they move together in the same direction. That is so different from the rest of this piece, with its almost constant use of contrary motion. And what's remarkable is that this same section is harmonically and even rhythmically different from the rest of the piece. It's a joy to recognize how the composer so artfully balances continuity and contrast within one short piece. I highly recommend listening to this, the Invention in E major, and listening for some of those ideas. And if you're interested in intriguing musical puzzles, I recommend checking out The Musical Offering by J.S. Bach. Now that I've given you some context, I'll demonstrate the tool itself. There's an option here to use a simple MIDI file of row, row, row your boat as an example, in case you don't have any MIDI files to analyze on hand. But I do have some files that I made of those 2-part inventions by Bach, including the piece that we just looked at. I transcribed each of the 15 inventions using my electronic keyboard and a free program called MuseScore before exporting each transcription as a MIDI file. In the process, I left out much of the ornamental notes in order to slightly simplify the pieces so that the counterpoint analysis would be more meaningful. Once the analysis completes on the server side, we get to the analysis page here. This page includes a list of the files being analyzed and a pie chart demonstrating the total number of contrary, similar, and oblique motion events occurring in all of those MIDI files. Further down the page is this histogram view of the contrapuntal motion events as they occur throughout the pieces in 10% segments or bins. The MIDI files are all slightly different lengths, but the x-axis of this chart is normalized to the total length of each piece. This histogram provides a visualization of the different kinds of events occurring at different times throughout the pieces. You could use this to visualize trends in a set of pieces, such as the ratio of contrary motion to similar motion at the beginning, end, or golden section of a piece and the set of pieces. Below that is an option to download a CSV file of those same figures. Let's take a look at that. Column A of the file represents the bin, or normalized 10% segment of all the pieces being analyzed. And column B represents the number of contrary motion events for each of those segments. Columns C, E, and G represent the percentage of the motion events for that segment, with each row adding up to 100%. There's an option to upload other files for analysis at the very bottom of this page. It would be fascinating to upload other, larger sets of contrapuntal works, such as the fugues of Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier, and to look for trends in those. Some questions that you might pursue include, does Bach tend to use more contrary motion in a fast-paced fugue? Does he tend to use more similar motion in minor key fugues? Are there any statistically significant differences in the ratios of these contrapuntal motion events, comparing the early fugues of Bach with the later fugues, or with the fugues of another composer? These are some things that you could explore. Music theory is as much an art as a science, so this tool can't provide all the answers, but you could use it to supplement your studies of contrapuntal music.